جلستنا الثانية ومباشرة حتى نكسب الوقت عنوانها FinTech in Changing the Financial Service Industry. في عنا مجموعة متحدثين مهمين وراح يضيفوا إن شاء الله الكثير للجميع. راح يدير هاي الجلسة بداية الأستاذ أحمد هناندي موجود معنا. أستاذ أحمد غني عن التعريف ولكن حاليا يشغل منصب CEO لإيراك إيجيت فور فاينانشال سيرفيسز. أهلا وسهلا فيك. بسرنا جدا إنه نرحب سويا بكل من طبعا مع حفظ الألقاب للجميع مستر إريك موديف. مستر إريك is the COO لأرب بانك. أيضا بنرحب بأمجد صادق CEO لليفانت نتورك انترناشونال. بنرحب بجانتي عبد الله جنرال مانجر STS Pay One. بنرحب برمزي قشير ديليفري مانجمنت دايركتور لاوبتمايزا، وعلاء قمصية CEO لكابيتال بانك. أهلا وسهلا فيكم ضيوف خبراء وقامة مع حفظ الألقاب للجميع وجود لك. شكرا.
شكرا لإنتاج على هاي الدعوة، شكرا للحضور على وجودكم، شكرا الكبير للدكتور زياد فريز على رعايته لهذا النشاط، وشكرا لإنتاج لأنه قرطوا علينا 10 دقائق. احنا 45 دقيقة إنتاج مش 35. بدي أشكر المتحدثين سلف على وجودهم، أنا يعني سعيد بوجودي وسطيكم. اليوم رح نحكي بموضوع كثير مهم، رح نحكي بموضوع الفنتك انوفيشن. موضوع بيشغل بال كثير. إريك I'll change to English in 2 minutes. بيشغل بال كثير من المستثمرين، كثير من القطاعات، كثير من المستخدمين. فنتك is booming worldwide. It's attracting the attention بعد اللي صار بالتليكوم والتليكوم انوفيشن، انتقلوا للفنتك انوفيشن، ومشاريع كثير عم تطلع واستثمارات زي ما ورجى نضال كبيرة عم بتصير. فنتك is driven by الانترنت penetration, smartphone penetration. It's driven by the growth of middle class citizens, untapped market opportunities, lack of physical banking infrastructure. Consumers value convenience over consumers صاروا to value convenience over the trust. Low level of competition والweaker data protection requirements. ما ننسى blockchain is coming up. كانوا بيحكوا عن السايبر security. Blockchain is the answer for cyber security on the fintech industry because blockchain provides a secured environment for processing of transactions. من 20 سنة ما كنا بنتخيل انه ممكن شركة بدون ريتيل انفراستراكشر تبني منظومة توصل سعرها $650 مليون بريجن تعتبر الأعلى بنسبة الانبانكد بيبل. سوق دوت كوم قدروا يعملوا هذا الحكي within 12 years. They reached a valuation of $650 million in a region where 86% average population are unbanked. لو نتخيل انه هال 86% 50% منهم had access to the financial system, what would be the value of سوق بهدول ال 12 سنة؟ I'll start my questions and I'll start with the banking sector. Banks, from my experience in telecom, we underestimated the telecom innovation, and that created monsters around us. We stayed inside our box and we thought that we are untouchable and we'll continue making money. Banks today are facing the same situation of telecom. Innovation in the financial system is all around you. That does not need the infrastructure of the banks, that does not depend on the banking infrastructure. What are you doing towards that? How much you are ready to be part of this innovation, how much you are ready for transformation, how much your teams are capable to take over these fast changes happening around you, plus what is your position towards these financial or fintech innovations that are going around the banking sector. And we can start with Eric.
Sure. Right. Good morning, everyone. If you look at the bank and the way our strategies are influenced by what's happening in the fintech industry, You have to go back to actually why banks have been there in the first place. It's actually to provide the financial needs through the life cycle of customers, being individuals, SME, or corporate. But what happened recently is this digital transformation or digital revolution. The interaction model between customers and banks and many other service companies have actually changed. It's not just going to the branch, but it's also using your device self-service capabilities to interact with the financial service ecosystem. And therefore, as a result of that, I think emerged the boom of the fintech industry. It was actually fueled by the fact that cloud computing, 4G technology, and also open source capabilities were made available to young entrepreneurs. So if they have great coding skills, they're able actually now to come up with smart ideas. And I think the fintech now are actually becoming a credible alternative to the big tech companies. Now, alone, I do believe fintech cannot do much, because what banks still want is actually to buy services that create what we call digital relevance to our customers, and something that is quite creative, that is quite unique. And this is where actually fintech can play a role. We banks have experience in the financial service industry. We know about regulations. We know about how to deal with security. But at the end of the day, we may not have the brightest ideas. So co-collaboration with the fintech industry makes a lot more sense nowadays. Arguably in Arab Bank, what we've done is we've created now 2 streams to bring our innovation to the next level. We've built an innovation hub. This is more geared to our staff to allow them to actually understand the new technologies, experiment those new technologies, and do some co-creation with the local regional fintech. On the other hand, we also we start actually an accelerator program, which is more actually to bring already established ideas, either from Jordan or outside of Jordan, but to actually to make them more relevant and adapt them to the financial service industry in the MENA region. Because Arab Bank is not just about Jordan, it's also present in many other countries.
Thank you, Eric. Ala, I'm still willing to challenge banks, actually, because all bankers are talking nicely about digital transformation and do nothing at the end of the day, according to the users of the banking services. What's the position? Are you satisfied with what banks are doing towards digital transformation? And are you ready to start the transformation at your bank?
Sure, thank you, Ahmed. I think I largely agree with what Eric was saying. The short answer is, are we satisfied? I don't think any banker would say they are satisfied. I think, Ahmed, there are a few very important questions we have to ask ourselves, and very few numbers that are staggering and very important. The number that keeps coming up in my head is 1.7 billion. That's the number of people living today, adults, who do not have bank accounts. In our region, that's 86% of the population, or the bankable population, as you just mentioned. And I think the issue is even exacerbated in Jordan, because if you look at some of the studies, there's a recent McKinsey study that says banks globally spend 6% of their expense line on technology and the upgrades. From the information available here in the market in Jordan, that's less than 1%. We spend less than 1% in Jordan on upgrades and technology, and that's the banking sector. Now, some of us have done better than the others, but on average, we've done only 1%. So we all have to do much better. But the important question we have to ask ourselves is, what is the core of all the fintech innovation? If you look at the very basics, it's addressing two points. One, the movement of funds, and 2, access to finance. And we can talk about access to finance for hours, but let's talk quickly about the movement of funds, our ability to make a payment. You can today send and receive an email in less than a second, but you can still not send and receive funds in less than a second. And what's the difference between an email and sending funds? It's, in essence, the exchange of information. So why is it available and easy today for an email or not for the exchange of funds? And the answer is very complex, of course, because the systems, the recognition of when funds are received and take good value from one place to the other still needs to be sorted out. And it can only be sorted out with technology. And I think banks have a long way to go. I truly think the banking sector in Jordan is taking leaps forward. And I think that we're in a unique situation because our regulator is actually ahead of us. In most countries, it's the other way around. And we should take advantage of that, all of us.
Thank you, Ala. And I have to agree, the RegTech, when the regulator transformation towards creating a digital environment that allows fintech innovation is so advanced in Jordan thanks to the central bank. And I know they are very close to launch the sandbox that allows the products and services testing, which will eliminate a lengthy process of approving these products and services and allow access to market in a very fast way, where banks need to make the benefit of that. I need to move into another part of the financial system, and that's the cards business. And I want to go into NI and ask them about the cards business. Recent studies says that the growth in the cards penetration helps the economy. And we need you to elaborate from your experience on that. How does the growth in the card penetration helps the economy?
Thanks, Abu Karim, and thanks for giving me this chance to participate, and thanks for Intaj in driving this great event. In order to make the answer more practical and close to a reality, let me tell you just a story of what we have done in Jordan. In Jordan, we started in early 1991, where we used to do an electronic payments through a manual mechanism, where the merchants used to do the transaction in a manual way. It takes them like 5 minutes to complete a manual transaction processing. During this journey of time, there was a startup things in innovating a new payment mechanism, which was not welcomed by the industry and by the people at that time, because cash is the king, and maybe in Jordan still cash is the king, despite we are trying to reduce this fact by what we are doing in the country with all stakeholders. With the journey of what we have done during that time, with the support from the banks and the Central Bank of Jordan and the regulation at that time, we shifted from the manual way of doing business into a digital transformation by equipping the merchants with the needed tools like the point of sales, and transforming a plastic card into more technological way of doing the business like Magistripe. Then it was moved to what's called e-chip cards and EMV. This journey participated strongly in increasing the more of card spending and more trust into such technological means as a card as method of payment. Despite the fact the card is still in a format of a plastic content, now the revolution is driving the business into a digital format. So the card bases and foundations will remain to be there, but now it is transforming into a digital format, like what's called now tokenization and contactless and so forth. Why I'm mentioning this story? If you see the numbers in Jordan and globally, you will see how much those spendings was done from very old days in 1990s in Jordan and up to date. Giving you some small numbers in Jordan, and we are still there is an indicator called PCE, Personal Consumer Expenditure, which is in Jordan today around 7%, which means how much the card is spending versus cash spending from the consumer perspective. So this is around still less than 7% in Jordan, which means still we are a cash economy, despite the fact all the effort that has been done. But I believe with the financial inclusion strategy that has been set by the Central Bank of Jordan, this should help the economy to grow into more digital format. For this reason, now we are talking about more regulations and more mobile PSBs and so forth. Now, if you see the numbers, for example, of the money has been spent on the cards in Jordan, we are talking about 2.2 in minimum for 2018 in billion, 2.2 billion US dollar that has been spent on the cards so far. Those spending on the card was done by Jordanians and by foreigners who is visiting the country. So we are bringing not less than 1.5 billion US dollar from outside into the country. So we are participating also in bringing more foreign currency into Jordan. So according to the global statistics, if we see like there was a statistics about more than 56 countries globally, which was done by Moody's. It talks about the card's participation in the GDP in minimum 1.15% in the GDP to 4% in China. And according to again to this study, the global participation in growing the GDP, it was more than 900 billion US dollar global participation in growing the global GDP in card penetration and card usage. I will stop here and maybe we can elaborate.
Thank you, Amjad. And I need to confirm on what you said. Moody's did a study in the UAE, and it says 20% increase in the card penetration means 5% additional growth in GDP, means 100,000 new jobs, basically in the online retailing, the credit and lending, and the loyalty, and so many other areas. Now I'll move towards the technology companies, and the challenge is for the technology companies. 1970s or 70s, banks introduced core banking system. And that was the revolution of banking industry that helped to triple the number of banked people worldwide. And then from 1970s till 1990s, banks introduced ATM machines. So it took them, it was a 20 years gap between the first fintech innovation of financial sector towards the second fintech innovation where a machine can pay you money. Amazing. That was like, you know, we used to go and take pictures over there. Now, from 1990s to 2000s, we got the mobile money. M-Pesa is a very big success story as a mobile money innovation. Now, in the last 2-3 years, we are unable to catch up with the number of innovations that comes up, and blockchain is in the headline news everywhere. And they are expecting it to be the game changer for the financial system or the financial industry. From a technology perspective, how do you look at this? Where do you fit as technology companies, where you used to be integrators or providing a value-added service to the core banking system, and now you need to lead and to be part of a complete process or a complete change in the direction of the technology innovation that has to do with the financial system. And I'm going to start with Ramzi, if you don't mind, Janti, and the floor is yours.
Well, when it comes to blockchain, really, you have to look at where it fits and who are the sponsors of it. Blockchain is typically a bigger investment. It's a complex and big undertaking. It requires coordination. It requires a community of institutions and entities to benefit from it. And that's where really in Jordan, maybe the big institutions or the central bank and the government, they have to sponsor such a community where you can start introducing more transparency in the business dealings. And also you've mentioned something important, the security. Security is a big issue. It's a big, it's a big challenge, and the blockchain will help everybody introduce or put in more security measures. The contract that is in place through using blockchain helps in managing the data, the transactions, the flow that goes between the entities. Definitely in Jordan right now, there are lots of ideas. The magic word really is, what are the use cases for blockchain? Where do we use blockchain? Do we use it in payments? And that's in one of the studies by the Big Four, it says that almost 75% of the fintech usage is in the payment processing, whether it's mostly cross-border also, because that is where it is needed more. The time to transact or to send money across borders is a lot, or it's too long. So that's one of the bigger use cases. Trade finance, you know, letters of credit and international trade. That's another important use case where they can apply it. Many other things that for us, the anti-money laundering, that's a big investment for banks right now to comply with the requirements with the regulators and basically push the information to the regulators. We've worked with many banks in Jordan on that, and it is time-consuming, it's tedious. So blockchain can also help in sharing that information with the regulators. Of course, there are other use cases in insurance companies, in financial, you know, the financial investment, clearing and brokerage. So blockchain is a good backbone. It's a big investment. When we talk about fintech, there are two types. Blockchain, which is, let's say, a very big undertaking, and there are the microservices, which help banks introduce new services, reduce the dependency on core banking. You know, I've lived over the past many years in selecting and implementing many core banking systems in Jordan specifically, and they are major undertakings. The banks invest a lot of money, and they are heavy. You cannot move them fast. So you need...
This is where I want to ask you, Ramzi, on this in specific. We're always proud of the resources in Jordan, especially in the IT sector. But do you think on the fintech innovation, taking into consideration that our schools teach nothing about that, do we have resources that banks can use in Jordan? Are we ready from a human resource perspective? Do we have the capabilities that can drive the banking transformation? You as an IT company, are you able to find the experienced, capable people to carry the innovation process within the banking sector?
To be honest, it's a big challenge right now. The demand for the resources is very high. You have fintechs have to compete with, you've mentioned Souq and Amazon, they're in town. There are other international companies that are coming to the region and they want to take advantage of the available resources. So we have to compete. Our companies, our institutions, they have to invest also with the education system in getting those people ready. Right now, if you ask me, I'll tell you it is very competitive. Right now, good resources, also they get attracted to the Gulf region. That's why also the Gulf region gets a head start on us, is because they attract you know, most of the talent.
Thank you, Ramzi. And before I go back to Eric, I just need to hear from Janti, because we're on the same thing, Janti. You just tell us where do you stand as STS, and how do you evaluate the situation at the moment?
Sure. Thank you, Ahmed. Actually, we started in Jordan too early. It was in the year of 2002. And when we started discussing online payments, it was as if we were speaking Chinese. So the market was not mature, and obviously we didn't make any money in the market here. So we tried there for 3 years. Then we decided to go to the Gulf, Saudi, UAE, Qatar, and so on and so forth. And we did a lot of work there with the government sector. So basically governments, when they apply online payment, they don't just do that because they're nice and they want better experience for the citizen or for the end user. When these kinds of solutions are applied on a central scale, these governments actually increase their revenue, and this is proven. The level of increase is between 10% and 30%, and that comes mainly from the fact of eliminating what you call leakage in revenue collection. In Arabic, some people call it, you know, اختلاس أو سوء المطابقة, let's say, أو تهرب ضريبي, name it whatever you want. So when you apply a central revenue collection platform that accepts online payment from multiple tools, let's say bank accounts, credit cards, debit cards, mobile wallets, and across all channels, mobile app, website, point of sale, then you know as a government exactly how much money you are supposed to be collecting, and you can measure this against the value of the services that you provided. to the public, and then you close this leakage. And in the UAE, what the government there did is that they used this saving or increase of revenue to finance these projects. It's simple. They actually made no investment at all. It was our investment, our money, Jordanian talent, doing these kinds of solutions in the Gulf. And no one had to do any kind of CapEx or OpEx investment in these countries. And I think this can now be implemented in Jordan, now that the market dynamics are changing and the awareness is there. And by the way, the Central Bank of Jordan did a nice job pushing the systems like Jomo Pay and eFawatiirkom to the level that most of the government entities now think that these systems are mandated and you can only accept payment through eFawatiirkom. What I'm saying is that there's more room to enable the acceptance of online payment using debit cards in Jordan. I always keep on repeating myself in these kinds of events. Currently, there are almost 4 million debit and credit cards in Jordan enabled for online payment. And this all can be switched through our partners here domestically at low cost. So it can happen. The thing that we don't have to discuss, not necessarily, I mean, blockchain and all these nice new technologies, I call them like step, maybe D or F. Now we are in step A. There's B and C. There are low-hanging fruits that we can, just catch and enable those services and achieve goals.
Janti, not necessarily that we agree with you on where A, B, or C, because the world is at C already, and we are at A. We need to be at C immediately. And the audience will answer you on this question because we'll see the results on the screen, please. The survey results. Yeah, we asked the audience how much fintech innovation impact your decision of selecting your bank or financial service provider. 70, the second one is what?
The second one, major.
Yeah, 75% says it's a major decision factor. 75% wants a bank or a financial institution that provides fintech innovation, the latest, not only an ATM machine or a debit or credit card. Very small percentage says it's not so important or not preferable. Not preferable, 1.2% says not preferable. 1.2% prefers the traditional banking services. Now, I'm giving the floor back to you, Eric, to comment on this. And you had something to say about what Ramzi said.
Not just Ramzi, but the first 10, 15 minutes has been very much IT-centric or IT-focused. The fact is that if we want to embrace what's happening with the fintech revolution, we have to actually apply a digital transformation in our respective organization. This is just not an IT job. It is actually something that touches every single department in any organization. We're talking about operating in a different way, thinking about product centricity, product design thinking, digital first, being a data-driven organization, applying an open culture, which means that it's involving lots of diversity and multi-cross-functional collaboration, but also including the external fintechs. So unless we do that culturally, and that's the hardest thing to do, we're not going to be able to actually transform digitally throughout an organization. So that's, I think, the first point I wanted to address. It's not about
the culture within the financial sector,
any organization,
the community itself.
Any organization, a bank or a service company, they start to think differently than we were thinking before. The way that the product was actually communicating with IT and operations to actually build new solutions has to actually change. And I'm sure many of you have heard of different ways of operating with sprint approach, minimum value proposition. These are all techniques to help us actually to come up with prototypes that we experiment and then we try and launch. So the whole mindset has to change. And the second point I wanted to add is that working with fintech requires a major rework inside the banks about integration. So typically banks have been very closed ecosystem, extremely secure to penetrate. It's a vault, right? How do you want to offer now external fintechs the ability to talk seamlessly to you and yet having a very secure interaction? And that's why you've seen actually the emergence of open banking standards, for instance, in the UK, and I've seen in Bahrain it's becoming a reality as well, because that will allow the digital ecosystem to actually interact a lot more seamlessly with the banks.
Thank you, Eric. I'll go back to Ala, culture change, mindset change within the organization, around the organization.
Yeah.
So now with the flow, give us your...
Sure, Ahmed. Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to be driven by the demand from the consumer rather than looking inside and trying to innovate. And if you look at the banks that are growing fastest, they are the banks who do not have any physical presence. Look at the UK, look at India, look at other places around the world. Banks who have completely set up themselves online without premises, no cash transactions, excuse me, are the banks that are growing fastest. And that just tells us that the demand from the consumer side is for this. These are new trends. And we looked at our own client base and we saw that at least a third of our clients are using 2 fintech solutions on daily basis. And this is affecting the way we live, affecting the way we socialize, affecting the way we conduct ourselves every day. But I think there's one very, very important thing that we miss a lot in the banking sector is that what will make a difference is our access to data and our ability to use that.
Thank you.
Startups, fintech innovators do not have that. They have the solution, but they do not have the data. And the banks who are going to wake up quickly and use that technology, because, let's be clear, banks cannot innovate at the rate that startups can. But if we can adopt this technology, use it, use the data we have, understand the client behavior, and then come up with solutions that make sense and integrate. There's a recent 2018 apologies, study by Deloitte. Our friends at Deloitte have said that they are predicting that banks that will grow are the ones who can open up their solution. It's no more about your core banking system and keeping your cards very close. It's about opening up your platforms for other solutions to be built on your platform so that you can provide a holistic solution for the client.
I tend to agree with you, Ala, because in every definition I looked at for fintech innovation, it talks about data comparison, data profiling, consumer behavior, historical data,
Absolutely.
and then products are designed accordingly. According to my knowledge, banks in the banking sector in the Middle East, I'm not talking about Jordan in specific, they don't have these data warehouses, they don't track these comparative data
Ahmed,
to be able to design products properly.
Absolutely. So some banks have woken up to this fact and now they're building data warehouses.
Excellent.
But that's not where it stops, because having data is one thing, and then making sense of the data is a completely different thing.
Thank you very much. That's where the product design comes from.
Absolutely.
I'll go to the IT again and tell us what you think of data. Are we Ramzi, you have been with banks for a long time in the region. So what do you think about how banks are using their data properly?
Actually, in the area of data, you can, it's an asset, but if you don't manage it well, it becomes a true liability. You can drown in data. Many banks have data warehouses, but how do they use that data? What is, how do they take that data and monetize it? The fintech and the introduction of fintech and nimble fintech, time to market, you can introduce products faster using that data. Many banks have the data. My experience that the data, there are many lapses in it. There are inconsistencies when you request information, because we work a lot with the regulator and we provide data to those regulators. The inconsistencies, the lack of information, required information, is a main obstacle. Now I'm talking about regulatory. There is cost also in not abiding by the regulatory information, yet you have also the commercial opportunities in introducing new products, knowing which customers are leaving the bank. When do they leave? Why do they leave? Can you predict that? Now there is artificial intelligence, there are algorithms that can do these things for you, and you can start taking actions ahead of time.
So I think one of the breaking through innovations on the fintech, Ramzi, is the robo-advisor today that's highly dependent on the artificial intelligence and that gives advice better than humans actually on the financial transactions. I'll move to Janti. You tell us about again, talking about the data, how technology companies are going to help the banks in dealing with this data, on designing their products, and to be this supporting arm for banks to get out of the banking box and connect to the other boxes around them.
Regardless how you call our current stage, whether we are in point A, B, or C, the way we see the market.
لسه حافظ لي إياها.
Of course. So currently we have an analysis for the Jordanian market, let's say, and the region in general. Only 15% of the businesses and entities, they have some sort of online presence, be it a website or a mobile app. The 85% do not have that yet. So the focus is to deliver solutions for today and tomorrow, not for 10 years. Yes, we think of the new technologies, and we are now discussing blockchain and the data mining and analytics. We have all these transactions that are happening through our system, and we get to detect patterns and encourage people how to, or they work with our merchants, with our partners, how to drive certain usages and advise people what to buy next. But today, if you take the current landscape of the market, I personally believe in delivering a solution that enables online payment without needing a website, without needing a mobile app. And we have something similar, and we're working on it. And the feedback we are getting from the market is that the adoption for this kind of a solution is much higher than trying to insist on all those government entities and the businesses to invest in a portal first or a mobile app, and then, only then, you can start accepting online payments. The claim is that no one really wants to make payments. No one is happy to make a payment. And no one is really so excited to go to a portal and memorize usernames and passwords and doing all these kinds of clicks just to pay a bill. Similarly, no one wants to download tons of mobile apps anymore. You feel that you are lost after all. How many mobile apps you want to download just to make a payment? Whenever someone wants a payment from me, just send me an SMS or an email with the link telling me that this is the amount you want to pay. Click pay. So simplicity is actually the advancement of it. Technology is, not always is a must, but can be used wisely to achieve the actual purpose.
Janti, thank you. We're running out of time, but I'll take 5 minutes of the 10 minutes that Intaj took from us. And I want to go into a different topic, to be honest, and I'll open it up for everybody to participate. I was starting with Amjad. Uber and Careem are platforms that started to allow consumer-to-consumer services. The same trend is happening in the financial sector, and peer-to-peer lending is coming up. Actually, peer-to-peer currency, well, that's the definition of cryptocurrency. It's a peer-to-peer currency, okay, is coming up. Peer-to-peer economy is coming up. So B2B, B2C is being challenged by peer-to-peer C2C platforms, and they're hitting now the financial industry. I want to hear your view on this I want to hear from everybody, actually, your view on this. How do you think the peer-to-peer financial transaction is going to impact the sector?
Frankly speaking, if you want to think about it in a legacy way and legacy of mindset, as I started describing how payment revolution started in Jordan at the early 90s, I would say it won't impact. But the way how we see now the digital transformation and digital payments are moving toward the markets and the consumers, I strongly believe that what will be happening in the coming 5 years is, I would say, unpredictable. For this reason today, during the global companies evaluation, they said if you can predict for a year time, then you are doing great. For this reason, I don't see that we can easily predict what this would impact the markets and the consumer behavior in the coming 5 years. But I would see that most of the fintech evolutions and the startup companies, and mainly not only Careem and Uber, but also a lot of the global technology giants like Google, for example, like Alipay in China, and there is a lot of other global initiatives that would play a major role in affecting the consumer behavior in terms of B2B or money transfer and so forth. If you see, for example, what Apple has done in US, despite how the way it's not yet in our country, but already they start moving to our region, like they already entered UAE markets, and Samsung Pay are moving maybe faster, and there is a lot of other also technological companies are trying to address and talk to the consumer directly and start bridging themselves between the legacy financial institution, between brackets, the banks, and the payment service provider, or even the payment schemes. So they figured themselves as a major vertical pillar in this game. For this reason, I strongly believe that what we will be seeing in the coming 5 years, if we didn't understand how this transformation are going, I believe we will be totally surprised in the coming few years, and maybe some major players will not be there anymore, and maybe they will stand behind and see where the train are.
Thank you, Amjad. I'll go straight to Ala as a closing remarks, and you can pick this topic or any topic that you want.
I'd love to talk about peer-to-peer. I think, Ahmed, if you're talking about peer-to-peer lending, I think it's a completely different topic versus peer-to-peer payments. I think peer-to-peer payments is there to grow massively and very, very quickly. When you're talking about peer-to-peer lending, I think there are a lot of challenges. It's still very, very small compared to the loan books of commercial and development banks. And in my mind, the biggest obstacle for that today is lack of regulation. If it continues to be not regulated, it will either not grow or mushroom into this giant that's going to be extremely difficult to regulate. And what happened to Bitcoin and other currencies is a classic example. But overall, I think when it comes to payments, it's extremely important. It will grow. It will make our lives easier. But I still think banks will still play a major role, because banks have to play the role of the ledger. Someone has to store the data. And banks today are the only method civilization knows to store that data in a secure and proper way.
The blockchain is all about ledger.
Absolutely.
So ledger now is not the challenge. So there has to be other attractions with the bank sector, because blockchain is all about maintaining ledger without the need of the traditional ledgers at the end of the day. And it's highly secured, unbreakable, anti-hacking. So and that's where the world is going.
Absolutely, but the ledger on its own does not make a transaction. The ledger is the base for it to happen properly, securely, and if banks are able to integrate that within their systems, then that's the future.
Exactly. So Ramzi, last minute for you.
Well, I guess the introduction of open banking is also important to allow for any third party. Most banks over the past 2 years internationally have, or 50% of them have doubled the number of partners that they work with. And that is very important. You are basically introducing new players into the banking sector that can provide services. Open banking allows anybody through proper APIs to securely transact with you, whether it's lending or bill presentment or any other type of transaction. And that is basically a new trend. It's already in the UK, and God knows when it will reach our part of the world.
UK has been mentioned like 20 times since morning, so I think we better send our people to UK to bring that experience back to Jordan. Janti, your last minute, go ahead.
In summary, I think now is the right time to invest in online payment and fintech in Jordan. I think the market is ready, mature. We are coming back to invest, and a lot of other companies also are going to provide some good solutions. So I think we'll see some good results very soon.
I like this. I second Janti. Whoever has extra money invested into fintech innovation, I think it is going to fly in Jordan. Amjad?
I would support the statement that has been said by Janti. Actually, the market is very, very much ready for the fintech investments and innovation. I also agree with Dr. Bashar. Maybe this is another generic statement that we need a strategy for the whole country, mainly for the e-government services and payments. And I would like also to elaborate about Eric's statement about it's the responsibility of every single institution and department in every single place. So it is not one IT job. It's not an IT job actually. It's a culture thing. It's a strategical thing that we need to build in this country. And I do strongly believe that Jordan, even if you look at it from different angles, it has all ingredients to be much better than what we are doing. All of us know that our resources are distributed across different countries, mainly GCC and maybe Europe and America, and our resources, Jordanian resources, are doing overperforming in those countries, and they are stars there. So why we are losing these assets into other countries? I strongly believe it's a direction from the government. If we decide to build a strategic thing for our country to introduce the electronic financial services, this would bring the attraction for the investments and for the human resources in order to bring better services for our country. And thank you very much.
Eric, Arab Bank operates in advanced countries with communities and customers who are actually highly financial literate, and operates in countries where financial literacy is too low, and the unbanked people, unbanked category is very high. And you run this as a group. So how do you balance, and how does the branches operating in highly advanced markets impacting the operations in developing countries?
Well, I think, first of all, Arab Bank has been structured primarily to have a lot of the central activities happening from Jordan. So even what you see outside of Jordan happens to actually be either thought or developed somehow in Jordan. But I think the point about the unbanked is that fintech, as we know, can play a big role to address the issues about unbanked, simply because of the lack of financial literacy and access to the banking system. Having a mobile and just giving your ID to actually connect and be able to transfer money or apply for microloans will be actually a big advancement to the economy. That itself can fuel more entrepreneurship, more small business, to actually be able to actually deliver value for the society and the community in general. So I do believe that, again, the ability for us as banks to integrate with fintech, collaborate with fintech, will be a plus to not just the banking sector, but also for financial inclusion.
I think we're seeing the revolution in the financial system started, and I'm very positive that we're going to see some good moves by the players in the financial system in the Arab world, and specifically in Jordan with the support of Central Bank. Thank you very much for being here. I know that the time is too short for this topic. It's a very important topic. I know that most of you have so much more to contribute, but unfortunately time is the king. Thank you very much. Thank you, Intaj, again for inviting us and for hosting us. Thank you, everybody, for being good listeners, and thanks for the panelists.